The cabin of Flight 207 was heavy with the hum of engines and the quiet exhaustion of travelers. But then, one sound tore through it all. A child's scream. Sharp. Endless. The kind that made every head turn, every breath tighten. In first class, Kendall Moore, a powerful CEO whose life was built on control, was now helpless. Her young son, Nolan, sat trembling beside her, his small fists clutched, his mouth open in silent panic. He couldn't hear her. He couldn't tell her what was wrong. "Please, Nolan," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Tell me what you need." But he couldn't. And she couldn't understand. Rows behind them, Damon Trent looked up from his seat in economy. Years of working with children had trained his ear, and this wasn't a tantrum. It was desperation. Before he could move, his 7-year-old daughter Adeline was already on her feet. "Daddy, he's deaf," she said quietly, eyes fixed on the soundless chaos up front. "I can help him." Before anyone could stop her, she slipped past the startled flight attendants and walked straight into first class. The crying stopped, instantly. Every passenger fell silent as her small hands began to move, signing words only the boy could understand. And in that still cabin, high above the clouds, something extraordinary began, a connection that would rewrite 4 lives forever. If this story moves you, subscribe to Acts of Kindness Stories for more true moments that prove compassion still has power. The cabin of Flight 207 felt like a suspended world. The air was thick with tension, the kind that made time stretch. A few rows ahead, Adeline sat cross-legged on the carpet between the first-class seats, her small hands moving gracefully through the air. The boy, Nolan, mirrored her signs, his face softening with every motion. Around them, the passengers, those who had earlier groaned and turned away, now stared in silence, watching something they couldn't quite understand. At first, there was disbelief. A little girl from economy, calming the child of a millionaire, while adults watched helplessly. One woman whispered, "Whose kid is that?" Another murmured, "Why is she even up here?" But Adeline didn't hear them. Her focus was absolute. She signed slowly, patiently, as if the noise of judgment around her didn't exist. Behind her, Kendall Moore sat frozen. The powerful CEO who had spent her career negotiating billion-dollar deals now sat speechless, watching a 7-year-old do what she couldn't, reach her son. Tears gathered in her eyes as Nolan began to breathe evenly again, clutching his blue knitted blanket to his chest. It was the same blanket his late grandmother had made, now retrieved from the overhead bin. The smell of home filled his lungs, and peace returned to his face. When the crying stopped, a strange calm spread across the cabin. The hum of the engines replaced the chaos. Kendall leaned forward, her voice trembling. "Sweetheart, what did she say to him?" Damon stepped closer, lowering his tone. "She's signing. My daughter learned when she lost her mother. It helped her talk again." Kendall blinked, stunned. "Your daughter, she knows sign language." "She does," he said softly. "She said Nolan was scared because he couldn't find his blanket. He thought he'd lost his last memory of his grandmother." For a moment, Kendall could only stare at him, then at the little girl kneeling before her son. Her polished image cracked, the careful posture, the controlled smile, all of it melted into raw emotion. "I couldn't understand my own child," she whispered. The words carried across the cabin, heavy and real. But before empathy could settle, a voice sliced through the silence. "Ma'am, passengers are not allowed in first class without permission," snapped a flight attendant. Her tone was sharp, her smile tight and false. The golden badge on her blazer caught the light as she folded her arms. Kendall turned sharply. "She's helping my son." "With all due respect," the attendant said coldly, "this section is for premium guests. We can't just have anyone wandering up here." Her eyes flicked toward Adeline, full of quiet disdain. She doesn't belong in this cabin. Damon's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, calm but firm. She belongs exactly where she's needed. The attendant's expression didn't change. Sir, I'll have to ask both of you to return to your seats. I can handle the child. Kendall stood up. The power that built her empire flashed behind her eyes. No, she said. You will stand down. The flight attendant froze. Around them, murmurs spread through the cabin. Phones tilted, cameras discreetly recording. The tension became visible, class, power, compassion colliding in a metal tube 30,000 feet above the earth. Adeline looked up, confused by the raised voices. Nolan touched her sleeve and signed something. She smiled gently, signing back before turning to the attendant. He's okay now, she said softly. He just needed someone to listen. The attendant's cheeks flushed. You're not supposed to talk to passengers up here. She's 7, Damon said sharply. And she just did your job better than you did. The woman's mouth opened, but no words came out. Kendall's gaze pinned her in place. I want your supervisor's name, she said. And I want this incident documented. You treated a deaf child like a disturbance. You disrespected a child who saved him. That ends now. The rest of the flight passed in uneasy quiet. The flight attendant avoided their section completely. Nolan and Adeline spent the remaining hours playing with their hands, laughing silently. Kendall kept stealing glances at Damon, at the gentleness in the way he watched his daughter, at the calm strength that seemed to hold the world together. When they landed in San Francisco, the CEO who usually exited first waited at the gate for them. The passengers who had recorded the confrontation now whispered about the little girl who silenced the plane. A video was already circulating online. Days later, Kendall called Damon. Her voice was steadier now, but still carrying that same mix of gratitude and disbelief. I can't stop thinking about that flight, she said. Or about how your daughter saved my son. I'd like to see you both again. Please. That lunch in San Francisco turned into hours of conversation, two parents from opposite worlds discovering they were not so different. Damon told her about Adeline's silence after losing her mother. Kendall spoke about her ex-husband who walked away when their son was diagnosed as deaf. He said it was too hard, she confessed quietly. He couldn't handle a child who couldn't hear him. He didn't deserve to, Damon replied. Hearing isn't the same as listening. Those words stayed with her. Over the following months, their lives began to intertwine. Kendall arranged flights for Damon and Adeline to visit San Francisco. Nolan flourished, speaking with his hands, laughing in ways he never had before. Adeline taught him words for colors, emotions, dreams. In return, Nolan taught her how silence could be comforting, how connection didn't always need sound. But not everyone approved. The same flight attendant from that day, her name was Marissa Clay, had filed a formal complaint. She claimed she'd been disrespected by passengers in first class and verbally attacked by Kendall Moore. She didn't realize who Kendall was. When the report reached the airline's executive board, Kendall was copied on it. She read every word, every lie, every distortion, and quietly forwarded it to the CEO of the airline. 2 weeks later, Damon received a call. They want your daughter and me to speak at a press conference, Kendall said. They're launching an initiative for inclusive travel, training flight crews in communication for passengers with disabilities. At the conference, Adeline stood on a small stage beside Nolan. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward as Kendall spoke. What happened on Flight 207 was a lesson, she said clearly. A 7-year-old child showed us that compassion doesn't need permission. Discrimination does not belong in the skies, or anywhere else. Her eyes found the crowd. For those who forgot that lesson, consequences have arrived. The airline spokesperson stepped forward, announcing the dismissal of several staff members involved in the incident. Among them, Marissa Clay. Her face appeared briefly on the screen before the lights dimmed. The audience gasped. Kendall didn't smile. She didn't need to. Justice had already spoken. After the event, Nolan tugged on his mother's sleeve and signed, "She's gone." Kendall nodded gently. "Yes, sweetheart. Some people need to lose what they take for granted before they understand kindness." Later that evening, as the sun sank behind the city, Damon and Kendall walked through the park with their children. The air was cool, the sky turning gold. Adeline tossed breadcrumbs to the ducks, and Nolan stood beside her, mimicking her movements perfectly. "They're good together," Kendall said softly. "They are," Damon replied. "They remind us what we forget as adults." She looked at him. "That listening can change everything. That love doesn't need words," he said. Months passed, and the connection deepened. The friendship between their children grew into something beautiful, two young souls who had turned pain into understanding. Kendall and Damon began to build something too, slowly, tenderly. Their worlds, once so far apart, began to merge. A year after that flight, they stood together at a small ceremony announcing the opening of the Jennifer Moore Foundation for Deaf Children, named after their mothers, two women who had taught them patience, empathy, and courage. The foundation provided sign language education for families who couldn't afford it and training for airline crews across the country. On stage, Adeline and Nolan stood side by side, their hands moving in synchrony as they signed a short message, "Kindness can fly farther than sound." The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. But for Damon, the real moment of victory came when he glanced at Kendall and saw her eyes glistening, not with grief this time, but with peace. Back at home that night, as the kids played in the living room, Kendall sat beside him on the couch. The television replayed a news clip of the conference. The headline read, "Airline apologizes to family after child's act of kindness sparks global change." She turned to him, her voice quiet but steady. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if Adeline hadn't stood up that day?" "Every day," Damon said. "But she did. And that made all the difference." Kendall smiled. "Your daughter changed my world. And maybe, so did you." Outside, laughter echoed through the house as Adeline and Nolan signed stories to each other. Their hands moved like poetry, words without sound, but full of meaning. And somewhere out there, the woman who once sneered that Adeline didn't belong, was standing in line at the unemployment office, scrolling through the news, reading comments from thousands of people calling her behavior unforgivable. Karma didn't need an announcement, it just arrived quietly, like a shadow following the truth. The story of Flight 207 became a symbol. Teachers used it in classrooms. Parents used it to talk to their children. The video recorded that day went viral, not for scandal, but for hope. Because in a world divided by noise, one small act of understanding had spoken louder than words. And as the camera panned to the closing image, the two children signing in the fading light of evening, the narrator's voice returned, steady and warm. Sometimes, the greatest revolutions begin with silence. Sometimes, the loudest change starts with a child who refuses to stay in her seat. That night, the house was quiet except for the soft rhythm of laughter echoing from the kids' room. Adeline and Nolan were teaching little Marcus a new sign, the word for hope. Damon stood in the doorway, watching the three of them, a gentle smile on his face. Behind him, Kendall rested her head on his shoulder, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. They had come so far from that tense morning in the sky, two strangers, two broken families, stitched together by a child's courage. What had started as chaos at 30,000 feet had become something steady and whole. Damon no longer saw himself as a man holding on to what he'd lost, but as someone building something new. And Kendall, once afraid of silence, now found comfort in it, because silence in their home meant peace, not distance. Outside, The night wind carried the sound of faint laughter through the open window. It felt like the world itself had exhaled. Damon glanced at Kendall, his voice barely above a whisper. All it took was one small act of understanding. She nodded, eyes glistening. And the courage to listen. The camera lingered on the children's hands, 3 pairs moving in sync under the warm glow of a lamp, spelling words the world too often forgets: love, courage, family. If this story touched your heart, help it reach others. Like, share, and subscribe to Acts of Kindness Stories, because compassion, when shared, never stops changing lives.